But yeah, astral projection, coming on to topic now.
Sure.
It started with me. I don't know if you'd be interested to hear this.
Oh,
but
absolutely. Please tell me how you started, where
I
you're
do
at now.
talk a lot. If you ask any of the guys, I do tend to talk a bit too much, to be honest.
Please
But,
do. That's why we're here.
yeah, but it started with me when I was a child. I used to have night terrors, sleep paralysis, you know, with the old hag syndrome and all that kind of thing. And I'd be, when I was little, we were in the process of finding a new house. And during that time, I was living with my grandparents. And I had like a bit of a bed set up in my grandparents' bedroom. Now, I'm probably about 5 or 6 years old at this point, maybe younger. And I'd go to bed, and then I'd feel like the vibrations in my body, really heavy vibrations, and I'd be pinned to the bed, and I couldn't talk, trying to scream for help. There was no sound coming out my mouth, just frozen solid. And I used to see like shadows and things in the bedroom. And then on one occasion, there was something pushing down on my chest, like an actual entity in front of me, sat on top of my chest, pushing me down into the bed. And then all of a sudden, I'd just snap out of it and just scream the house down. I mean, my grandparents and things, they believed in ghosts and things like that. So that's what they actually believed that I was experiencing, you know, at the time. But even prior to that, before that situation, I had a ghost encounter where apparently, bearing in mind, I'd only just learned to talk at the time. I was like 2 or 3, and we were only just talking. And my mum used to come into the bedroom, and there'd be toys everywhere, and like she'd be like, what's happened? What's happened? And I'd turn around and say, oh, it's Faria that did it. Faria did it. Now, bearing in mind, I'm like a 2-3-year-old child,
Right.
and I'm basically using a medieval term for a blacksmith, you know, there's no way I could have learnt that because the village in which I grew up in, nobody ever uses that term, you know, and she believed that we were getting visited by a ghost. And I think that, you know, it's something to do with the whole astral projection side of things. I'm, you know, accessing this by accident and bringing back information that I might not have known. Now, it starts to lead me to believe that if astral projection is just a product of the mind, there's a lot more information locked inside there than we're actually able to access, you know.
Right.
So,
So what's your stance on that?
my stance on astral projection, I personally believe that through reading about, you know, quantum mechanics and things like that, I believe that there is, I mean, you can only go on what reality shows you because there's electrical signals in your brain.
Right.
So you touch, taste, smell, all that kind of thing. It's just everything's dark inside there. You know, everything that's coming from the outside in, it's just the brain making an interpretation of it. So what's actually out there, if anything at all, if it's not just waves of potential that the brain is decoding and making sense of, what's actually out there, you could never really know. Because, I mean, if you had some advanced computer and took someone's brain and hooked up all the different sensory parts of the brain, the smell, touch, taste, and all that kind of thing, and created an environment on that computer as a piece of software, you could trick that person into believing he was living in a reality.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So essentially, my standpoint on it is that I believe that consciousness, as we understand it, is everything. It's not something that is created in the mind. It is the mind. It's everything. It's matter. It's absolutely everything. It's the space within space and all that kind of stuff. And I think that consciousness is essentially, on one level, having an awareness experience through us being the biological vehicle. Now, if we imagine visible light being a small spectrum of what is on the frequency spectrum, and we are right in the middle in visible light, or the overlap, right there, I think that what's happening is it's like the phase relationship in the brain. I think what's happening is something's happening up there that allows us to see outside of the spectrum of visible light. That's my take on it. I don't know if it's
That's
true.
interesting.
Yeah,
Put a lot of thought into that.
And the reason I think that is because one of my experiences was I went into a lucid dream. Now, a lot of people try to tell me that astral projection is lucid dreaming, and it just drives me insane because,
Right. Yeah,
you know,
I hear the same thing.
You know that, don't you? I mean, when you have a lucid dream, there's none of this like vibrating sensations. There's still a bit of unclarity to it, and you know, and also in a lucid dream, some people report that they can control their environment. So if I was to say I want a pink elephant to appear in front of me right now, or I want to jump off the ground and fly, then in a lucid dream, if you control that dream reality, you should be able to create that.
Sure.
However, in the astral realm, there is none of that control. You can only travel to places by the speed of thought. You can say, I want to see this, I want to go there, I want to see this, I want to see that. I can't say, just make a pink elephant appear in front of me in an astral projection. I don't know if other people can. Maybe.
I've had experience doing, just manifesting stuff in front of me. Typically, it takes like a closed door or around a corner or something like that. Like I mentioned in one of my projection experiences, I wanted to see it rain because I had never experienced any kind of weather. And so I got to the front door and I said, when I open this front door, it's going to be raining on the other side. And I did.
All right.
Sure enough, it was.
Cool.
I've never tried doing anything as extreme as a pink elephant, but...
All right. See, that's maybe it's a subjective thing in it then, because I mean, I've not really had a chance to talk to anybody face to face about these experiences, except for Aaron, and he's not really had anything that is quite a prolonged experience.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I don't feel like I've got control over the environment in the sense that I could just do what you've described. However, maybe, I'm starting to think that maybe it is possible. Maybe lucid dreams and astral projections can be essentially two of the same thing. And maybe it's a different vibrational state that you're putting yourself in. But
yeah, I think
for me,
at least for me, I see them as maybe related, but they're different. So my lucid dreams are nonsensical, the way that dreams are, right?
all right.
You're in scenarios that in normal waking life would make no sense at all, but in that dream state, they seem to make sense to you. And they're all a little hazy, and they're all very dreamlike. And I can control some things. I can't control the environment itself, but I can control. I've got control over at least what I'm doing. And in projections, everything is crystal clear. I've got peripheral vision,
Yeah, that's
which I
how
don't
I
have
feel.
in lucid dream.
Yeah.
And all the physical sensations are there, like all my senses work, which that's not the case in a lucid dream.
Yeah.
In a lucid dream, I've mentioned this a couple times in my videos, but everything just feels very deadened. I try to touch something. And
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, very deadened.
I feel the same way, but I always find that a lucid dream tends to be the gateway for me to get into an astral projection.
Yeah.
As soon as I realize I'm lucid, that's when I can go in. Coming back to the point about the visible reality and coming outside of visible reality, it's said that when you have an experience, it doesn't matter really what you see in the experience, but the experience itself can teach you things on a deeper level. And like for me, the reason I kind of believe that it might be something to do with, your body sort of adjusting to various different frequencies to experience what's out there, is because I started off in a lucid dream and I was in this old house, right? Like in World War II, right? And it had been bombed and all the beams were shattered and, and on this little desk in the right-hand corner of the room, there was me and my fiance in the dream. Now, as soon as I realized I was dreaming, my fiance disappeared and it was just me in this room and I had some clarity. I was in a lucid dream. And I remember seeing this old, like, 30s style radio. Now, on this radio was a very demonic sounding voice coming through the speakers. And I found that quite intriguing. And I'm thinking, what's going off here? So, like, I start turning the dial because it was disappearing and then the static was coming through. So I'm turning the dial and following the voice up the frequency spectrum on the actual radio. So imagine your dial going up, right? And I'm trying to follow it. I get right to the top setting on the radio and the voice is there. And it said something really creepy, which I can't remember to this day, and it disappeared again. So I thought, well, I'm going to try and find it again. So I tried to turn the dial from the top to the bottom again to start all over again, right? Mm-hmm. So I turned it down, and as I'm turning the dial, this massive sound, right, it just like a boo, kept getting deeper and deeper. It was like being stood next to the world's largest speaker, and they've got a sine wave on it, like boo. Right, and that's how it felt, and then it just felt this and as it got closer to the bottom, I felt this massive vibration. My body's like all over, like really intense, and these sounds in my ears, and then all of a sudden these voices are in my ears, not in my head, literally like they were outside coming in, which I always found really creepy. Yeah. And the next minute, I'm sitting up and I'm thinking, oh God, thank God that's over. I turn around, I see my fiance laid there, and there's this thing on top of my fiance, and it was like. Have you seen Harry Potter?
Yes, sure.
The Dementors in Harry Potter?
Yeah.
Imagine one of those, but 5,000 times scarier. Like, just floating through the air, manifesting, and it sort of manifested this face, and it was hovering over my fiancée. She's laid there. She's all, like, completely conked out. And it turned its head, and they were like a white face and these red piercing eyes just sort of faded in with the black kind of thing. I can't really explain it. Mm-hmm. And it kind of looked at me, and I was terrified, and I kind of backed away, looked at myself laying on the bed, which freaked me out even further, and then I came back to my body. And as I was coming back to my body, I could like sort of hear like a laugh that was carrying on through to the waking state, if you get what I mean.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
sure.
that was like the scariest experience ever. You know, that was literally the scariest one, because I actually thought I was sat up in my bed. I didn't realize until, you know, I started feeling the difference and how light I felt and all that kind of stuff, that, you know, I was in a projection, so to speak.